So together now, we're going to be looking at our next question, questions about Jesus Christ. And specifically, the question we want to think about, is Jesus the only way? And for a lot of people, conversations that I've had, it seems that this really generates a lot of discussion. People are willing to say Christianity is a fine religion, works for people, is great, but what they get really kind of worked up about is the idea that Jesus is the only way for everybody. And that is the message that Christianity has. And so I'm just curious what kind of thoughts you guys have when you think about that, or when you hear that, things that come to mind for you, or things you've heard others wonder about on the question about Jesus and where he fits, or why he is the only way. Anything come to mind?
The only two religions in Albania was Muslims and Christians. That was it. I mean, they didn't. By tradition, I was Catholic, but because of the communism, we weren't allowed to believe in anything. So we were raised atheist. But it was more like traditional thing. It wasn't really about faith at that time. It was like something that if your family is Catholic, then
right,
you should be Catholics. But then when you start growing in faith, that's when you start realizing these questions. You know, why is the Christianism the only way, or why is Jesus the only way?
Well, that's a good point you're making. That as long as it's just kind of a cultural thing, the questions aren't that big a deal.
No.
It's just Christianity is part of my culture. Islam is part of your culture, works for you, works for me, no big deal. But when you start getting serious about this thing and start asking questions that might change how you actually live or think about life, well, then the questions start to come. And the questions about Jesus get a little more pointed. It's not just sort of fun and games anymore. Now it gets more serious. That's a good point.
When you mentioned about the Muslims and Christians and all that, they believe what they believe, but how can it be the right thing? No, I'm just still confused that they can massacre and do all these things and then call themselves whatever.
Religious people.
Religious
no,
people.
That's a legitimate question, Linda. I think that perplexes a lot of people today. The Islam community will be quick to point out that the people who are carrying out these horrendous actions are not doing it in the name of their religion, but are really, aberrant or radical, and they would not speak for all of Islam. But maybe a deeper question beneath the one you are asking is the one that I hear a lot is, okay, so we've got these good people, Islam, peace-loving people, who are fine people and sincere in their faith. You're telling me that they're not right with God because they don't believe in Jesus, or they don't accept Jesus as the Son of God. And that poses a real challenge for some people because they see real sincerity and good, pious works that are coming out of these people, and they don't understand why they're wrong. What's so bad about that? It can be perplexing.
Yes, it is. Very.
Yeah? All right, Juan?
Yes. I don't know, but for example, for me, it's a little difficult to understand something. Is the same God with the Muslim people? I mean, right now, these couple of days when I saw the news, was terrible because this is terrorist. This is not religion. So I don't know which one is the good way to know if they have a good God, because our God is different. So my question is the same God?
Wow, that's a great question, and you're not alone in wondering about that. Is it the same God? The God of Islam, the God of Christianity, is it the same God? And people have spent a lot of time thinking about that. My quick answer, and we'll talk about this more as the teaching goes, but I would say, in a short answer, I would say the gods that are being portrayed by the two religions are quite different, and so are not the same God. Even though there's common Old Testament history and there's some common background, the God that ends up being worshipped in the two religions is quite different and would not be the same. Tabitha, what are your thoughts? When you're thinking about Jesus, what comes to mind? How do you react? What are your thoughts?
I believe that God put Jesus into this world to show us how we should be, how we should, help other people and be as loving and just such a peaceful person,
So you really identify with Jesus as the example, an example of God's goodness and of how we should live, kind of the standard for all of us.
Yes, the standard. Yeah.
All right, all right. That's a good insight. I mean, a lot of people will identify with that part of Christ, and He is certainly that as a standard of what it means to be good. I appreciate that. All right. So Tabitha, what I'm curious about is that idea that Jesus is a tremendous example for us. I'm with you on that. What I'm curious about is, does He mean more to you, or is he more than an example?
He's more to an example, like more than like, I don't know, like pastors or ministers and
Sure.
stuff. You know, like, I don't know. He is God's son, and
Okay.
therefore, you know, he's gonna follow in his father's footsteps. You
Okay.
know, that type of thing.
All right. No, absolutely. So you're saying he's more than just a really great guy. I mean, he rises above the level of best guy I ever knew. He's the Son of God, and so, but you're still really kind of focusing on, from my hearing you, is kind of the idea of how he emulates his father, or follows in his father's footsteps. That idea of example again, kind of living the righteous life.
Yeah.
That's important. Okay. What's interesting is because Christian teaching usually says, okay, that's part of, but really a critical aspect is the whole idea of Jesus as mediator, the one who makes things right with God. That you haven't thought about that much, or? Okay. All right. That's fair enough. I think the teaching might spark some more questions then. That could be good. All right. Linda, I'm interested also in how you personally might be thinking about this. I know you've shared your story is that you spent a lot of years outside the church and really not paying much attention. I'm curious now at this point what you were thinking about Jesus then, or maybe how that's changed now, or what questions or what has maybe brought about that change for you, and where Jesus fits in all that for you.
Yeah, I do have a question. You know, when I was going to church when I was very young, I believed it all. I'd get up and go to church all by myself. Nobody had to take me, and I was just a little girl. But somewhere along the line, I got out of the Catholic Church. I went to public school, and it just seemed like I drifted away from any kind of church. And now that I am back in a church, I feel that my life is better now. I understand some things better. I still have doubts, not about God, but just maybe not, I shouldn't say doubts, just questions
Sure. Well,
that
yeah.
I need answered in order to understand it better and be a better Christian.
All right. Let me ask you two questions.
Okay.
So who is Jesus to you?
He's my Savior.
Okay. What's that mean?
That he died on the cross to save me.
All right. All right.
And eliminated all the sins.
Okay. All right.
Is that the right
Good.
answer?
That's a good answer.
Good. Sometimes I worry.
All right. All right. Good. Any other questions or anything that comes to mind when we're thinking about Jesus and where he fits and why he's such an important figure? All right. Why don't we take a look at the teaching, and then we'll come back and talk some more after you guys have watched and we've thought about it a little bit.